everyone. My name is Joe Lee, and this is my third speech for public speaking class, the informative speech. So I just want to paint a picture in your guys' minds for a second. I want you to imagine that it's just like a Tuesday night and you just finished a long day of school. It was already a long day and you probably had to go to a practice or game or maybe even work after school and spend even more time doing stuff that you maybe didn't want to do. Now you finally get home and you realize that you got a lot of homework to do. So you decide to just crank out some homework for a bit, and then you realize that it's 9 o'clock at night and you have had no time to just rewind and relax for a bit. So you whip out your cell phone and decide to just scroll for a little bit to just relax before you go to sleep. As you're on your phone, you scroll, and those scrolls turn to minutes, and those minutes might even turn to hours. And before you know it, that 6 a.m. alarm hits, and you feel like you got absolutely no rest whatsoever. And you got to do the whole process again, feeling extremely tired the entire day. Let's be honest, we've all probably been in this situation before, and I was in this exact same scenario as I was writing the introduction for this speech, so I think it's pretty accurate. So the purpose of this speech today is to inform you about the causes of sleep deprivation in teenagers and the effects that it has on teens' minds and their bodies. Sleep deprivation, which is caused by a lot of problems and factors like lifestyle choices, habits, and priorities in life, can have very negative effects on teenagers, specifically their physical and mental health. As someone who is in high school and is a teenager right now, I can say that I also have to deal with a lot of priorities in life like school, work, sports, social life, keeping up with families and friends. And sometimes it's hard to get adequate rest when you got all these priorities to deal with. So there's this pretty popular stat from the CDC that states that 80% of teenagers are sleep deprived, which if you do the math, turn into a fraction, that's 4 out of 5. There's 5 of you in the audience today, so that means 4 of you guys probably are sleep deprived a little bit. So in this speech, I'm going to explain what exactly causes sleep deprivation in teenagers and how those problems affect teenagers' mental health and their physical health. So first off, we got to start with what causes sleep deprivation in teens. A lot of it has to deal with our priorities in life and a lot of different factors, but the first and main one is school. School already starts pretty early. Here at Gross, we start at 7:40 sharp. A lot of other schools, it's pretty similar, probably like 7:30, 8 o'clock, whatever. So that means that we have to wake up at 6 o'clock, 6:30 every single day. Now, according to Ebony Media, they found that the Child Mind Institute did a survey on many teenagers, and the majority of these teenagers stated that they would prefer to wake up around 10 or 11 o'clock every day, which is about 4 hours later than what we actually have to do around 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock. And so waking up 4 hours earlier than we should really disrupts our sleep rhythm and really hurts our overall health. Along with school, we are also just extremely busy. We have sports, we have practices, we also probably have jobs, so we're probably working a lot too. And it's just hard to get adequate rest when you got so many priorities in life. Also, as teenagers, we probably have some bad habits that hurt our health, the main one being our screen time. A lot of us are pretty glued to our phones, and at night, we all like to use our phone a little bit before we go to sleep. Now, you've probably heard your mom or someone tell you, don't use your phone before bed because of the blue light this, blue light that. Like, what does blue light even mean? I mean, I don't really know, but all I do know is that blue light suppresses the melatonin production in your body. Now, melatonin is a hormone that basically keeps us sleepy and helps us sleep better. So if blue light is suppressing that, we're already gonna have trouble falling to sleep and losing those precious hours of sleep. There was a study done by Stanford Medicine, and they came to the conclusion that 72% of teenagers use their phone before bed. So now we know exactly what causes sleep deprivation, but how does it impact us? Sleep deprivation ultimately impacts us in a variety of ways, specifically with our mental health, our brain, and our physical health. The less sleep we get, the more likely we are to be stressed, have anxiety, have mood swings, and probably harder to focus. So if you're ever sitting in class, maybe you're sitting in this speech right now, struggling to stay awake, it's probably because that you had a bad night's sleep and you might be a little bit sleep deprived. The National Sleep Foundation came to the conclusion with their recent study that teens with 8 to 10 hours of sleep, which is the recommended amount of sleep that teens need, were much less likely to have depressive symptoms. So they were overall happier, healthier, and more lively throughout their life. So as sleep deprivation continues, the symptoms become even more serious. The National Health Institute came to the conclusion that insomnia and sleep deprivation in teens were linked to much higher chances of things like depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, cognitive issues, and just a whole other variety of mental health issues. And sleep deprivation doesn't just have bad effects on our brains, but it also affects our bodies in multiple ways. Sleep deprivation makes it hard for teenagers to perform at very high functions throughout their life, specifically in things like their sports, schoolwork, and like homework, making sure they're staying focused and active throughout the day. Also, your reaction and like coordination might take a hit if you're too tired and might not be able to understand things great because you're so sluggish. This National Health Institute also had a recent study that showed that the lack of sleep led to a weakened immune system, headaches, and an increased sensitivity to pain. With all these different problems that keep arising from a lack of sleep, students became even more and more stressed, and they were even more likely to fall behind on their work and their sports and things like that. The Child Mind Institute sent out a lot of surveys and reported a lot of data with car crashes recently, and they came to the conclusion that 100,000 car accidents that happen each year are ultimately caused by fatigue. And a lot of those car crashes also involved a lot of young people. So when people aren't getting sleep, it doesn't just impact like how they perform on a day-to-day basis, but there's also huge problems that really threaten people's lives. With all these people, specifically young people who are sleep deprived, they're ending up in car accidents and causing even more and more lives. So in today's speech, I explained the causes of sleep deprivation in teens and how those effects and problems affect our mental health and our physical health. Sleep deprivation, which is caused by our everyday habits and lifestyle choices and our priorities in life, have had serious effects on the mind and bodies of teenagers. It's pretty easy for us all to sacrifice our sleep, especially because we all have so many priorities in life. You might be playing sports, you might be in clubs, or you might just be dealing with a lot of homework. It's easy to just be so focused on those things that you just don't find enough time for sleep. So tonight, after you have a long day and you decide to just bring out your cell phone and just scroll for a little bit, just think to yourself that you could be increasing your likelihood of sleep deprivation greatly. And that means that you could experience many of the effects like depression, anxiety, and all the other physical problems that come with it. Thank you for listening today. This was my third speech for public speaking class. And also in the audience today, I have 5 of my classmates here at school. I have to address that. Thank you.